All right, well, welcome back. This is week 2 of 747, and this is for Wednesday, the 30th, I believe. And so, you guys, we're going to be looking at Psalm 46. Okay, this is a fun psalm, really interesting psalm. This psalm starts out, God is our refuge and strength. Okay, now this psalm has been a huge help to a lot of people throughout the ages. One in particular, a neat story. When Martin Luther, not to be confused with Martin Luther King Jr., different guy, Martin Luther, the reformer, he was sentenced by the Pope at the time. He was basically sentenced to death. He was called a heretic and said that he had to burn at the stake. This is the psalm he went to when he felt like he needed comfort from God. And this is the psalm that he wrote the classic hymn, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." And what he's saying is that God is here to protect me, and God was, and that's exactly what turned out. So it says God is our refuge and strength. Now, what I've done here, I've gone through already and highlighted the things that I would observe and highlight in my observation time. So you can take a look at that and try to think about those things as well. Today we're going to just walk through the interpretation side. Okay, so you remember, you're going to observe, you're going to interpret. Okay, if you have time, key point is to summarize, and this really helps with figuring out how to do this. And do this in your group. You don't have to like figure it all out beforehand. Have them summarize these ideas. Okay, summarize, and then we're going to come back and apply. How does this apply to me? Now, these parts, the observation, I want you to do in your group. The summarize and application, I want you to do in your group. We're here to help you. What I'm going to do today is help you kind of with the interpretation of this, all right? And so you have something to bring to the table when after students observe and ask questions, and you can say, well, no, Josh put it this way, or whatever, So I've kind of already pointed out some key things here. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble, right? This is a key point that it's getting at here, that God is help in trouble. Now, but this is the cool thing about this passage. It's not just saying that God is there for you, when bad things happen, when hard things happen. I mean, yes, he is, definitely, but it's not just talking about like when you stubbed your toe, or even worse, when like a really bad thing happened, like a loss of a parent or a loved one or something like that. Those are bad times. But look at how strong this is stated. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives away and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. What this is doing here is basically, it's reversing creation. It's saying, hey, even if the world were to fall apart, even if creation itself would become undone, would be destroyed, we will not fear. That's how much strength we have in God. That's the kind of trouble he's talking about. This is a major statement of faith, that God will be with us in major life crises, like big time. So it says that even if the mountains fall into the sea, into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. Here's what I noticed as I was reading this. I noticed that it mentioned sea, mentioned waters, and then in the next verse, there is a river. See, there's a break here in the stanzas. In fact, in some translations, there'll be a Selah here, which we don't really know what Selah means, but it really, we do know it's a break. And so there's a clear break between this passage and this passage. But after talking about the sea, big, massive, waters roaring and foaming, mountains quaking at their surging of the sea, a strong force, right? Chaotic force. It moves into verse 4. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. Now it kind of brings it down a little bit into a river. Now, but even I think the word river here is probably too big of a translation, because here the city of God is one probably to highlight. What is that? What is the city of God? Well, that is, we find in Psalm 48. Actually, it does tell us that it uses the same phrase, and it tells us that city of God is Jerusalem, which we could kind of guess from that. It's the capital city, but it's a little bit more than just Jerusalem. However, the reference here is definitely about Jerusalem, because in Jerusalem itself, there is a river, a very more like a stream, not a big flowing river, but there's water that goes right through the city, and that water fed the city. And in those days, they only built cities around water sources, and so you either need to be right on a lake or right at a river. You need fresh water, and so there was a river there, and it was a stream, and it did make glad the city of God. Jerusalem, it kept it going. Now get this: it says the holy place where the Most High dwells. Now it's interesting that in Jerusalem there was a holy place. It was the temple, right? And most people would have said that's where God dwells, is in the temple. But this verse doesn't say that. It actually says that it's in the river. It's in the sustaining, life-giving part of the city. He's saying this is where God is. He's been sustaining the city. He's been helping the city. And it's kind of in contrast to this chaotic, crazy waters, but God is there. Really neat. And we're going to see how that changes over here in just a minute. Verse 5 says God is within her, within the city. Okay, right back to this idea of that river, that small presence there. Its ever presence is always there, right? It's ever present. It's always been there. It always will be there, no matter what happens to that temple. God's presence is there. It's within her. It says here, she will not fail. She, talking about the city, she will not fail. I highlighted that, and I'll get to it hopefully in a minute. That's a strong, will not fall, not fail. But still, it's a strong statement about the city of Jerusalem. God will help her at the break of day. Nations are in uproar. Kingdoms fall. Okay, this idea of kingdoms fall. And she will not fall. Kingdoms do fall, though. He lifts his voice. The earth melts. Okay, great concept. God's voice gets lifted. The earth melts. Okay, now, I don't know if he's saying literally that there's melting, and although he could do that, this is something else. This is a quieting, or we'll see how it applies later. But verse 7, the Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Notice I've highlighted within, and ever present, and then over here it ends with again, that he is with us is a key part of this passage. Another thing you'll notice as you read the whole thing, the reason I've underlined this verse, the Lord Almighty is with us, the God of Jacob is our fortress, is that this is repeated twice. It's on verse 7 and verse 11. That tells you a little hint. That's a very key part of this, that the Lord Almighty is with us. All right? So, after verse 7, though, we've kind of got, we see a flow of logic here. He's got a statement of truth, and if you notice, this really ties into these key points. So verse 1, 7, and 11 are pretty tied. There's a problem, even in hard times. There's the truths about God, that he is there, he's been there with us. And then verse 8 and 9 I highlighted because it, to me, seems like it's standing on its own. All of a sudden, he starts talking about war. Come and see what the Lord has done. The desolation he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shield with fire. Now, to me, this part at first seemed like it was out of place. Like, why is it here? And so I highlighted that and had some questions about that, as I think a lot of people would, until it hit me that this is a lot of talk about the truths about God. Talks about his voice that we hear, and now he's saying, come and see. In a sense, this is like the evidence of what he's done. So these are truths about God that he's going to protect, that he's going to be there. And look, this is what God has done. And in fact, it reminded us as we were talking about this of a story in the Bible that God actually does this. And if you want to take your people there, you can. In 2 Kings 19, verse 17, Hezekiah prays a prayer. See, the Assyrians were attacking the city of God, Jerusalem. And Hezekiah is king, okay? This is one of the great grandchildren of David. He's king, and they are attacking, and God's promise was that she will not fall. So Hezekiah prays the prayer. It says, "It is true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste these nations and their lands all over the place. They have thrown their gods of other nations into the fire and destroyed them, for they were not gods. They were fake gods," is what he's saying, "but only wood and stone fashioned by human hands." So now he's saying, "Now, Lord our God, who's a real God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God." Get what he's saying here. You stop wars, you protect us, and by doing that, you're telling the world that you are God. And that was Hezekiah's prayer. God did that. He actually miraculously came in and really silenced the war. He stopped this. And verse 10 says, he says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." It's almost exactly what Hezekiah prayed. He asked, "Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of earth may know that you alone are God. Know that I am God." And I thought that was a great parallel to this. How seeing what he's done, seeing how God can stop the war, can stop the suffering, can protect his people, it actually shows that he is God. That we can know he's God. Now, this is a phrase, of course, "be still and know that I'm God," is one that we take and we use a lot about our own selves, in a sense of, like, sometimes we kind of say we need to get away and be still, we need to stop what we're doing. In the context here, it's not quite saying that. However, you can apply it that way. It's really talking about nations that are warring against each other in this fight for power, and how all people need to stop kind of fighting for authority and just recognize their place. Just stop striving, be still with all, and just know who is God. I think this is where we can really apply this to Jesus, who is our Lord, right? And so part of this whole thing of salvation is recognizing who Lord is. It's not it's not trying to do it all on our own anymore. Not trying to be gods of our own life and the Lord of our own life. Not trying to fight the battles ourselves, and allowing him to do it. And so that's where this ties in. I think it ties in really well to Romans 10, 9, and 10. That if we confess that Jesus is Lord, and believe in our heart that God raised him from the dead, we will be saved, right? It's being still, not trying to be our own Lord, and allowing him to do it. So, and by doing that, and by stop striving and allowing him to be God, especially in the nation's sense, he'll be exalted in all the nations. I will be exalted in all the earth. And then the reminder again, the Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Now, one thing I want to bring up that is interesting. It says she will not fall. But we all know that Jerusalem actually does fall. The city falls. And so this is where I think this is also pointing beyond just Jerusalem into something else. And of course, we know the book of Revelation talks about the new Jerusalem and how God will establish a new Jerusalem. And that Jerusalem, that city did eventually fall, but that's really not all that this is talking about. This is really pointing to heaven, and how when we're close to the river, to that source of life, and then we're closer and closer to heaven. And that's a place that will never fall. That's a place that will forever stand, and that's where our hope is. Not in a physical city, not in physical powers, but in the Lord who's promised that he's got a place for us. All right, well, that was a lot. I hope it helps. Have fun teaching. See you later.